My grandfather is, I guess, was born in Prussia, which is Russian, Poland, Germany. It's no longer a country. And he emigrated, I guess. I don't know what year they came over to the United States from, but they were escaping the also the what they were seeing of the Germanic influence, and came to America, New York. And so in 1900, around there, it was also when my mother's parents and family came over from Norway, and there lived in Bergen, which is on the coast, south coast of Norway. And so that heritage came together. But my grandfather was a promoter of music, musicians, and the most famous musician of almost of the 20th centuries, the great violinist Jascha Heifetz, was a primary that was, he was born in 1900 and came over in 1917 at the time of the Russian Revolution, and he was escaped and needed promotion, and so he came to New York at age 17, and my grandfather and his company promoted him for 10 to 15 years after that, 1917 to the 1930. And that heritage of music, I didn't get this information from my parents, my father. The parents were also very quiet, as is my father, about his heritage. He did mention something about doing something with promoting entrepreneur, it's called, musicians who came over, brought over from Europe. And that was the position in the business that they had in New York City, where I was born. And so I didn't know about this. It would have probably, I didn't know much about it, just a few words here or there, really. And I think it was somewhat of a mistake. But that's, you know, the way that was. They had left the past, and there was not much connection with any of the grandparents. At least I didn't have it. My mother had some, and my father's mother was still alive. I have a picture of her with an eagle, it looks like, a bird flying, and she's standing outside in the pine trees in the field there, and where we live. And the last picture we probably took of her, with very few pictures of Grandma. And I was pretty young when she passed away, only a couple of years, 3, 4, 5 years old or something like that, I think. I recall that picture of the eagle or bird flying over her, and she was born on December 7th, which is the Pearl Harbor. And that's how these things are related in some way. And they get us to searching and looking beyond the religions and the nationalities, and also looking into music or arts or other creative and lifestyles, you know, that might have some meaning. And it's important actually for everyone to at least get some of that, because that starts the door and the ball rolling. And that's what happened to me. I went to the same school that my father went to. It's a prep school in Connecticut. And I had a very good education. I actually went to high school for 5 years. So the schooling industry, you know, I was very lucky in that sense. 5 years in high school, and then I also began studying and learning and reading and checking out all of these other avenues of learning on my own. So in the late 60s, we had the, the Beatles and the rock revolution, and also the death of the three President Kennedy, his brother Bobby Kennedy, and Martin Luther King, and we had Muhammad Ali, and all of these men were iconic figures who were at some level rebelling. Go back with Elvis Presley in a funny sort of way, because he was a leader of rock, which was a rebellion in a way of music, but he went with the social context on his own, into movies and icon worship and all the rest of that, and money systems. And at the same time, we were growing up with The Sound of Music and the Dr. Zhivago, which presented the Russian Revolution. And the third movie was Lawrence of Arabia, who went to the Arabian continent and was fighting with the tribes in Saudi area, Arabian continent. And that's what those three movies. Sound of Music was about the German occupation and the musician family that needed to leave Germany before the war got started, or at the point where the war was beginning, World War II. And that's a famous family that eventually made their way to America and Europe, London, whatever, to be singers and demonstrate singing free music, which is what I was raised on, and impacted me. And it also impacted the search and the universal idealism. Now, not everybody in my generation did, but there was a huge number of people, and it also was part of this drug and what do you call it, sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture. But it had more to say to that, but it was also trying to, these attitudes which led to the Woodstock event, where all the people were able to gather in one place and hear what the artists were doing and what everyone was feeling and sensing. The war was still on in Vietnam, and that war was completely orchestrated, again, like all these wars, by the military-industrial complex and the economic, cultural system in America, and we were not in agreement with it. So now my friend Ronald here, he kind of bypassed this, let's say. He was with the war system, I think that's fair to say, and believed in that. And there's no judgment, because we all get our lessons and our cultural or psychic and dimensional references, let's say, with the dreams and our spiritual awareness, or our humanity, and our and the what's the word, when we have for some reason that perfect word didn't come to me, about the conflict that we all have as human beings with the systems, but not just that, with our own humanity and with humanitarianism and naturalism and universalism that is not being readily accepted, or is being operated within certain frameworks, which religious, social, business, economic, and scientific vehicles for these systems that have been inculcated in a repetition of war and the borders of and acceptance of values or lack of thereof. And so that led me up to 1970, where I had went on my own quests and traveled across the country, and other experiences with my with the school system was part of that. I went to a 1 year of college that was not an official college. It was an experimental college where the students made up their own curriculum or study, and we weren't required to do anything. And it was a free school in the mountains of New Hampshire, which is also where I picked up the hiking and some of that naturalism, and also just breaking the cultural binds of what relationships are supposed to be, and how we do things, and to discover one's own individualness and creativities and true relations to everything, instead of having them modeled, which is something that was somewhat openly available to a lot more people. It's still openly available, but this is a whole thing that has led up to the current situation, where we have an increase in that controlled module, and also a great deal of common ignorance and dumbing down of humanity, to not be willing to see, or they're not being taught it. The same thing as before in the schools, but now it's even worse, because all they're getting is the media program. At the same time, there's a large number of people that are doing this process anyway, and it has been inculcated in some ways in the systems, but they're adapting it, or trying to make sure it's under the control. And so, as an example, meet people. Yesterday I met someone who didn't hardly know some of the most famous musicians from the 60s, 70s. Did know Jimi Hendrix, though, which was a very iconic figure, because he was really expressing the universal creativity and sensibility. He lived it, he shared it, he went out of its framework into creating new, and the recordings that were made are incredible examples. So this was a process for myself, and I did this. I went to California numerous times, eventually moved there in 75, and then began. I was also really in earnest studying every single occupied spiritual, psychic, metaphysical, religious, or other kind of studies that include creative artists and that kind of thing. And at the same time, I'll say I didn't really occupy myself with applying this as readily as I could have. What I did do, though, was occupy my main focus, which was to find something that I was looking for that was this holistic. And so that was the board or bridge that led to the Eckankar, which finding Paul Twitchell, Spiritual Notebook, is a book that said all the religions are all part of this one thing, or there's a circle of all these different avenues that are part of this kind of this, you could call it the mandala. And part of that was a connection or something with Phoebe Quantz and this so-called temple that's in the Himalayas. And there's supposedly, or I say there is, a kind of a painting or a mural or whatever on the ceiling, this place, sanctuary or temple or whatever in the mountain. And I had a few experiences with that. And that was, there was also confirmations of past lives. And there was another thread that was through this, that was the connection. Okay, well, who and what, and then there's all kinds of things about tying together, whereas the past lives that were valid or unseen, or the ones that I had misunderstood, let's say, or didn't fully recognize, but you don't have to, in general, know any of this, except for you're pulling together who you were and what was real, which is, of course, much more than all of this. As an example, our dream visions and the fact that actually dreams are real, that's two different things. And what you really want to get is the reality, it's the true reality that we're experiencing, and these dimensional relations. That again is part of that, to become aware, to be aware, and to use that real awareness. And in the former, it was dreams, past lives, and soul travel. Okay, but this would be not my goal here or position to put. You've got to inculcate this same program, because all it is part of the all that we are all becoming aware of. And by that process up till 1980, then officially, let's say, said, okay, I recognize this. And I was part of that whole shift and change that also happened within the group. And also is kind of like stuck right in the middle, because I came in at the end of Darwin Gross, and it wasn't officially with the next wave, or whatever that is, but I was in the middle of that. And so I always had a little bit of an open door, like, say, that way, where I wouldn't get caught in the, again, you know, you can get caught in all of these ideologies and identifications, instead of, no, it's just another all of the all is. And that's pretty much what took me quite a while after that, moving along, but also seeing myself not necessarily moving along. And whatever that was then, there's always some things that are holding us back. And, you know, there'll always be, we keep carrying these things, of course, you know, whatever, until we let them go. Throw everything in the river was one example. And you know, I had to let go of everything I had a number of times. And my friend I met in California was part of this in the 80s. And we were participating, and but I moved to California. I didn't have anything, but that was, yeah. I mean, it was with Val working 3 days a week, and had a very small room.
I wanted to clarify something that you had said. I don't know if you were mentioning my name or not, about being a, were you referring to me as being a warmonger?
Now, you see, this happens to me a lot, is that people tell me that I call them some name. I was very careful to not say anything about you are such and such. I said that you were participating with the military-industrial complex.
Where'd you come up with that idea at? Back in 1958, we had the draft. So you either served in the service or you served time in prison. And so I joined the Navy in 58 to 61. So I would pick the service that I would be most suited for. And I've never, that Vietnam War, we had absorbers in there in 56. That war started in 56, basically. And I was never for the Vietnam War. I could see that was a terrible mistake. And even when Ho Chi Minh met in the, I think it was in Paris, treaty talks, he had in his hand a roll of paper, and he took it to our people, which he was, I thought he was our friends at that time. And it was the Bill of Rights. And he was going to implement the Bill of Rights in the North and South Vietnam. And I think Mr. Banker, Rothschild Banker, found out about that. And so there's a lot going on. And people need to understand what the real true history is. I thought I'd get that off my chest. Thank you.
That's great, Ron. I mean, that's the story, you know, for sure. Eisenhower was trying to say, look out for the military-industrial complex, and they didn't want to pay attention, of course, and so forth and so on. And nobody's really a hero, and nobody's really a villain. And you know, it's all going to be part of the context by which the people will want to become aware, because they will see all of these obfuscations, and you know, after a while, our being gets you know, to the point where it's refusing to allow those things to have considerations. So you know, in order for us to progress, we have to. And so, yeah, I took myself up till through the 80s and 90s, but there was working myself into, I was identifying with the lifestyle of being independent, and that's what my process was for that. At the same time, I was also I was doing some things creatively, and I was living very creatively or independently most of the time. And it wasn't that I refused to take a job or any of that. So I did this and that and the other thing. I was a travel agent in Hawaii, and that was good. And I got that job through another friend. And, you know, that's you know, rather than actively be participating in the social system and its, you know, center points, I, you know, was always on the not doing that. And I also had discovered the astrological, that I was actually an astrologer since '75. So I've been using the math skills that my father gave to me. Back in the 1960s, actually, what I meant is, see, my father was a CPA, and he worked at 666 Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. It's called the Top of the Sixes building. And it really didn't occur to me for a long time about that, you know, thinking about 666. Now, I was in that building at the weekend, the week of Woodstock. I was working in the 666 building, and I was, you know, I was only 17, so I wasn't allowed to go, et cetera, et cetera. And I was still very, very young compared to, let's say, in some ways developed very, very innocently, we'll say. But I was certainly aware of the music and everything. And since then, using that math ability, I've been able to create the solar universal zodiac, and this all relates to the solar, the Solaris, the solaristry arts, but I meant the Star Rock legend, which is this idea, that vision that came to me about a dream of a girl who dream travels with her father. They go back and way back to the primitive, when the cave painting, I call them the Star Rock painters, or the cave painter peoples, the native peoples who painted the life's universal story in the rocks. And this led me, I got a whole scenario, which is a creative expression of the Star Rock story, where we were once all connected to all life, and we were the Star Rock people, or the Orange people, or whatever, the real people, and we were all connected to all life, plants, nature, and the universe, and each other. And the music was the connection that we could share this universally with, and all the vibrations through all of everything that music, the real music is always going through. So it was just a metaphoric, story, which is that shared in the Destiny book. Also, about 6 different centers in dimensions, or whatever. It's all, kind of interrelated, trying to express that, how the creation was made, and how humanity became of this, and the whole generation of the wheel of 84 and the cycles of experience in lifetime after lifetime, and whatever brings us up to this moment, where we say, where are we now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Val. Very good.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Thank you. To be continued.
That was great, Peter. That was very, very good. Thank you, Peter. We need historians to make it more fun here. Thank you.